You wake up, and before your eyes are even fully open, the weight arrives, the bills, the slow progress, the feeling that no matter how hard you work, the financial breakthrough you are waiting for never quite comes. Something is missing, and that something may have been hiding in the oldest book of wisdom ever written. What if a single prayer buried inside the book of Proverbs carries a metaphysical frequency so precise that it begins to shift your financial reality before your feet even touch the floor? Napoleon Hill believed it. He studied it. And for decades, the men who built the modern world used it quietly, every single morning, before the rest of the world woke up. Napoleon Hill spent 20 years interviewing the wealthiest minds in human history. And what he found at the intersection of ancient scripture and mental law will permanently change how you begin each day. Stay with this. Everything you are about to hear is the key you have been looking for. Most people lose the day before it starts. They lose it because of what happens in the first 5 minutes after waking, a window so brief and so critical that most people pass through it every single morning without ever realizing what they are surrendering. Those 5 minutes are a threshold, a doorway between the subconscious world you inhabited during sleep and the conscious world you are about to enter. What you think, feel, and speak inside that window sets the vibrational tone for every financial decision, every interaction, every opportunity that will appear before you in the next 16 hours. Hill called this the hypnopompic state, the liminal bridge between sleep and full waking consciousness. During this time, the subconscious mind is still open, still impressionable, still listening. It has not yet erected the defensive walls of habit and worry that will harden within minutes of full consciousness arriving. Whatever enters the mind in this state bypasses the usual filters of doubt and skepticism entirely. It goes straight into the deep architecture of your belief system, into the place where your financial reality is actually being built. Now ask yourself honestly, what is the first thing that enters your mind when you wake up? For most people, it is fear. The automatic mental replay of whatever financial problem was unresolved the night before. The subconscious picks up exactly where the anxiety left off, without invitation, without conscious choice. And what Hill understood that most people still do not, is that this is a habit executing itself. Habits, once identified, can be replaced. The book of Proverbs, one of the most densely packed repositories of financial and relational law in all of human history, does not simply offer moral comfort. It offers a technology of the mind. Proverbs 3, verses 5 through 10, contain what many metaphysical scholars have identified as one of the most powerful declarations of intentional prosperity alignment ever recorded. Trust in the infinite intelligence with all your heart. Lean not on your own limited understanding. In all your ways acknowledge the divine mind, and it shall direct your paths. Honor the universal substance with the first fruits of all your increase. Look at what is actually embedded in that passage. There is an internal logic that mirrors precisely what Hill would spend decades articulating through the lens of modern psychology. Trust first, because without it the channel is closed. Release personal limitation, because the ego mind is the single greatest obstacle to receiving. Acknowledge the infinite source before acting, not after results arrive. Give materially as an act of alignment. This is a protocol disguised as scripture, and Napoleon Hill recognized it as such. In Think and Grow Rich, Hill wrote that the starting point of all achievement is desire, but desire without faith, without genuine alignment with something larger than personal will, produces nothing but frustrated wishing. The prayer in Proverbs is what closes that gap. It is the bridge between wanting and receiving, between intention and manifestation. Most people have been standing on one side of that bridge their entire lives, looking across at the wealth they desire, never realizing the bridge was always there waiting to be walked. The breakthrough most people are waiting for has almost nothing to do with effort or opportunity. The deeper issue is the misalignment between what a person consciously desires and what they subconsciously expect. Those two things are operating in direct opposition in most human beings, and they will continue to cancel each other out until the morning is reclaimed. The waking state is the one daily window where that gap can actually be addressed, and the ancient prayer is the tool for addressing it. Napoleon Hill did not arrive at these conclusions casually. He was commissioned. In 1908, Andrew Carnegie charged a young Hill with a task that seemed nearly impossible. Interview the 500 most successful men and women in America, find the universal laws behind their success, and give those laws to the world in a form anyone could use. It took Hill over 20 years. What he found shook him. Across every interview, regardless of industry, background, or circumstance, one pattern appeared without exception. Every person who had built lasting generational wealth operated with what Hill called a definiteness of purpose, a burning, precise, internally felt, and outwardly declared commitment to a specific outcome. Hill wrote in Outwitting the Devil that the single greatest weapon the forces of limitation use against human beings is the absence of that purpose. He called the alternative drifting, and he named drifting, not poverty or bad luck, as the true root of financial failure. The morning, unguarded, is exactly where drifting begins. The prayer in Proverbs, spoken with intention at the moment of waking, is the daily act of refusing to drift. Every word of that prayer is a declaration of direction. Every declaration is a signal sent into what Hill called infinite intelligence, a force he described across his entire body of work as the ultimate source of all wealth ideas, all creative solutions, and all fortunate convergences that the uninitiated call luck. Hill was careful and consistent in how he described this source. In Think and Grow Rich, he named it infinite intelligence. In The Law of Success, he called it the great universal storehouse of knowledge. In private interviews, he described it as a vibratory medium surrounding all conscious beings that responds with absolute precision to the quality and clarity of the thoughts directed into it. He was not speaking loosely. He was pointing at something he had observed empirically across 500 of the most financially dominant minds of his era. Thomas Edison understood this at an operational level. Edison reportedly developed a practice of entering a semi-sleep state deliberately, sitting in a chair holding metal balls over a tin bowl so that the moment genuine drowsiness arrived and the threshold state opened, the balls would drop, wake him, and allow him to capture whatever had surfaced from the deeper creative field. He was harvesting the hypnopompic state, the same threshold Hill identified as the most critical window of the day. That doorway between sleep and waking is not a biological inconvenience. It is the most direct access point to the field of intelligence from which all genuine innovation flows, and Edison, one of the most prolific inventors who ever lived, knew it and used it every single day. Hill connected this to the spoken word through what he called auto-suggestion, the fourth chapter of Think and Grow Rich, and arguably one of the most underestimated principles in the entire book. The subconscious mind does not respond to silent mental activity alone. It responds to emotionally charged, repetitively spoken declarations. Hill wrote that any idea, plan, or purpose may be placed in the mind through repetition of thought. When that thought is spoken aloud with genuine feeling, the impact on the subconscious operates through an entirely different and more direct channel. The voice activates, the body resonates, the signal moves. In the beginning, according to the oldest texts of human civilization, was the Word. And the Word, Hill would tell you, was not metaphor. It was mechanism. Napoleon Hill named the law, sitting beneath all of this the law of cosmic habit force, introducing it in his later work as the supreme organizing principle of the universe. The statement of the law is straightforward. Its implications are staggering. The universe, including the human mind, operates through fixed patterns that, once established, become entirely self-executing. A habit formed at the subconscious level does not require conscious maintenance to continue operating. It runs on its own. It perpetuates itself. It recruits evidence, shapes perception, and filters reality to confirm and reinforce whatever pattern it represents. Poverty consciousness is one such pattern. Said plainly and without flinching, it is a groove worn deep into the subconscious through years of repetition, fear, environmental exposure, and emotional reinforcement until it runs automatically, pulling every morning's first thoughts back into the same anxious loop. When a person wakes and the immediate instinct is financial dread, that is the habit speaking. The circumstances may be real. The dread is a pattern, and patterns respond to deliberate intervention. The intervention begins with recognition because you cannot redirect a force you have not first identified. The morning waking state matters so deeply, precisely, because it is the brief window before the habitual mind fully activates, the narrow gap in which genuine choice exists. The prayer of Proverbs lands in that gap with a specific and powerful function. It is a pattern interruption, a deliberate insertion of a higher frequency signal into the exact moment when the subconscious is most receptive and the habitual poverty loop has not yet resumed its hold. What follows the interruption is where Hill's philosophy becomes almost ruthlessly practical. The subconscious does not tolerate emptiness. Remove one dominant pattern and something will fill its place, which is why vague positive thinking produces so little lasting change. The replacement must be precise, emotionally charged, spoken rather than merely thought. Or the morning prayer does all of this simultaneously. It interrupts the poverty loop, installs a specific signal of alignment and abundance, and through daily repetition begins building the new dominant pattern. Over time, through the relentless mathematics of cosmic habit force, that new pattern reaches critical mass. It becomes automatic. It begins enforcing itself the way the old one did. The person who once woke in financial dread now wakes in an orientation of receptivity and creative expectation, not because their circumstances changed first, but because the filter through which they perceive their circumstances has been fundamentally rebuilt. Earl Nightingale, the most direct intellectual heir to Hill's philosophy, whose recording The Strangest Secret became the first spoken-word record to achieve gold status, reduced this entire architecture to 6 words. We become what we think about. Behind those 6 words is the full weight of the law of cosmic habit force. The brain builds its structure around the dominant signal. It rewires itself, physiologically and metaphysically, around whatever frequency is most consistently and most intensely broadcast. The morning prayer is the act of choosing that frequency before the world chooses it for you. Andrew Carnegie was not a man given to soft spiritual sentiment. He built the Carnegie Steel Company from nothing into a $280 million empire at a time when that figure represented a concentration of economic power almost incomprehensible by modern proportion. He was a negotiator, a strategist, a builder of systems. And yet when Hill asked him directly what single daily practice he attributed most to his financial dominance, Carnegie described what he called the morning alignment, a period of deliberate mental preparation that preceded every business communication, every meeting, every financial decision of the day. He spoke of tuning his mind toward solutions rather than problems, toward possibility rather than constraint, toward the creative field rather than the reactive one. The quality of that first mental state, Carnegie told Hill, determined the quality of every consequential decision that would follow. The prefrontal cortex, the region of the brain governing decision-making, risk assessment, and creative synthesis, is profoundly shaped by the neurochemical environment present at waking. When cortisol dominates that environment, the brain narrows, it threat detects. It defaults to conservative, fear-anchored choices and screens out peripheral opportunities that do not fit the threat narrative. When the waking state is instead anchored in deliberate trust, gratitude, and intentional alignment, the neurochemical profile shifts entirely. The brain opens, pattern recognition expands, opportunities surface that the fear state mind would have filtered out before they ever reached conscious awareness. Carnegie intuited this. Hill documented it philosophically. The neuroscience simply caught up later. Henry Ford operated from a related conviction, believing that whether you think you can or think you cannot, you are correct in both cases. This tends to be repeated as an inspirational slogan. Ford meant it as a precise mechanical description of how the mind constructs its working reality. A person who wakes in poverty consciousness does not perceive the same set of available options as a person who wakes in wealth consciousness, even when both are standing inside identical external circumstances. The filter determines what is seen determines what is acted upon, and what is acted upon determines what is produced. The outer world is, to a profound and uncomfortable degree, a projection of the inner one. The prayer of Proverbs, spoken at waking, does not rearrange your bank account overnight. What it does is begin, immediately and measurably, to shift the filter. The perception changes. The actions that follow from that changed perception are different. The results those actions produce are different. The circumstances that accumulate from those results are different. Hill spent his life trying to communicate this sequence to a world that kept looking for a shortcut, and the shortcut seekers kept missing the mechanism entirely. The spoken word is not incidental to this process. When a thought is spoken aloud, it leaves the electrochemical domain of the brain and enters the physical world as acoustic wave energy, actual vibration moving through matter. Hill described this in terms that align with what modern physics calls resonance. A tuning fork, struck at a specific frequency, causes every object in its environment tuned to that same frequency to begin vibrating in response, without being touched, without any direct physical contact. The prayer spoken at waking operates as that tuning fork. The infinite intelligence, which Hill described as the universal medium through which all creative intelligence flows, responds to aligned vibrations sustained over time with genuine emotional intensity. Wealth does not begin in the bank. It does not begin in the market or in the right opportunity arriving at the right moment. It begins in the first 5 minutes of waking consciousness, in the quality of the mental and spiritual posture assumed before the world makes its demands. Napoleon Hill's philosophy, built across 20 years and 500 interviews, meets the ancient wisdom of the Book of Proverbs at one thunderous point of convergence. The mind aligned with infinite intelligence before the day begins is the mind that perceives, attracts, and creates wealth throughout that day. The mind that surrenders those first minutes to the poverty loop perpetuates the very pattern standing between it and the abundance it desires. The 30-day Bedside Challenge is where this knowledge becomes practice. The protocol is simple and non-negotiable. Before your feet touch the floor, every single morning for the next 30 days, you speak the following declaration aloud, spoken, with feeling, with the emotional intensity Hill identified as the activating force of the subconscious. Speak these words: Infinite intelligence, I trust in your perfect wisdom with my whole heart. I release my limited understanding and acknowledge your guidance in every decision before me today. I am open to wealth, to creative solutions, and to every opportunity you direct my path toward. I honor abundance by giving generously of my time, energy, and resources today. I align my subconscious mind with the frequency of prosperity, and I receive now, with gratitude, everything that is already moving toward me. 30 days, every morning, before you stand. Hill wrote in Think and Grow Rich that whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Conception is the prayer. Belief is what 30 days of daily repetition builds inside the subconscious. Achievement is what emerges from that rebuilt inner architecture into the outer world. The sequence does not work in reverse. It has never worked in reverse. The outer world is always a delayed reflection of the inner one. We live in a universe governed by law. Napoleon Hill knew it. Andrew Carnegie built an empire on it. Henry Ford constructed the modern world with it. Thomas Edison drew from it every morning in a chair, holding metal balls over a tin bowl. Earl Nightingale distilled it into 6 words that changed millions of lives. The law of cosmic habit force does not negotiate. It enforces whatever pattern has been most consistently and most emotionally established in the subconscious mind. The ancient prayer of Proverbs is the technology for establishing the right one. You are learning, right now, to become the frequency that wealth is already seeking. If something in this teaching has opened a door in your thinking, if you feel the shift that comes from genuine understanding rather than surface-level inspiration, then subscribe to Napoleon Hill Wealth Code right now and join a community of people who have decided to stop drifting and start directing. Every week we go deeper into the principles that the wealthiest minds in history actually used, not the simplified versions, the real architecture. Click the button. The next insight is already waiting for you. Napoleon Hill said it best, and there is no better way to close than with his own words. The starting point of all achievement is desire. Keep this constantly in mind. Weak desires bring weak results, just as a small fire makes a small amount of heat. Now go light the fire, speak the prayer, and claim the morning.